So, in this lesson today, we're going to talk about two core things: longevity and functional medicine. So, perhaps when you think about longevity right now, you're thinking about these experts out there like Andrew Huberman and Mark Hyman and Brian Johnson, who is basically living by the slogan, don't die, right? You have these incredible experts, and I really appreciate the work that they do because it is incredibly inspiring. But at the same time, I feel a lot of these gurus can create overwhelm. They have extreme approaches, and the good thing about that is that it pushes the boundaries for what we know is possible. But for us people just kind of trying to navigate a everyday life who don't have the opportunity to go all in with living inside a red light therapy chamber or just eating completely strict because we have a chef to cook all our food, for us it becomes hard to even envision the possibility of living a life that is that extreme, right? So this kind of elicited me to start thinking about how we can look at balance and how we can look at making something work with the life that we are living. So I then started thinking about longevity again and what is it? And what is ultimately the purpose? And in functional medicine, longevity is really not about just adding years to life, it is about adding quality to those years. So we want to live long, healthy, without medications, without having to, without feeling, constantly overwhelmed and bombarded by all the choices, but finding a system and a framework where it's possible to live completely in harmony, right? So then let's rewind a little bit. What is functional medicine and what is the functional medicine approach to longevity and also to health in general? So in functional medicine, we look at, of course, a lot of things. We look at all the things that they do in conventional medicine, and you can go quite deep there, but you also look at a lot more. We try to paint the whole picture of who you are. We try to look at your whole history. We try to look at your nutrition, your sleep, your relationships, and even your stress management and more. We look at how the emotional aspect of life all intertwines with the mental, spiritual, but also the medical and all the biological processes. So the goal is to draw a big map of who you are and how you become the way that you've become. And it's quite fascinating when you start looking at all of these things. But then again, you don't have to start at that point. You don't have to go out there now and spend thousands on functional medicine tests. You don't have to go out there and get a fancy doctor or do all of these incredible things and buy red light therapy devices for tens of thousands of dollars or something like that in order to get better. It all starts with the basic principles and the basic small changes. And that brings me to the first concept that I want to share with you today. The first principle that I want to expand on is called the 80-20 principle or the Pareto principle. We use this principle in economics, we use it in a lot of other aspects, but I love it because it gives me the headspace that I need in my life to not be overwhelmed. And I'll expand right now. So, my goal for you is that your health is so well functioning by going through just this course over, the next weeks and months, and for you to get your health up to a point where you can actually just start to indulge a little bit more and do things that are actually not good for you some parts of the time. So, in other words, if you can imagine right now that 80% of the time and 80% of your life, you have a quite healthy framework. So, let's think of it as that. You're trying to build a framework. Within that framework, you have a 80% bracket. And then on the outside, you have a small, thin 20% bracket. And inside that 20% bracket, you have family time, you have social time, you have parties with friends, you have all of these things where it's very hard to control the circumstances. You know, within your 80% bracket, that it's quite easy because you're in your own house, you are in your everyday life with your family, you can control almost all the aspects. But then you have the occasional parties, you have the occasional social things, you have Christmas parties and Easter and Hanukkah, or I don't know, Ramadan, and you have all of these different cultural aspects that, pull you in a direction where it's hard to be the awkward guy sitting in a corner doing your own little thing. So my goal for you here is that you start looking at your life as a framework. We are trying to design a solid foundation that accounts for 80% of the time in your life and all the choices in your life. And then you have that small bracket on the outside. Right. I hope that makes sense. Try to kind of lock that into your mind. Okay, so just to conclude about the 80-20 principle, the other aspect of it, not just the framework, is to think about your actions. And if you were to right now start thinking about the top 20% changes that you could make in order to propel yourself forward, what would those be? So the principle here is that we're trying to eliminate waste. We're not trying to look at what you do 100% of the time. We're trying to look at how can we try to make some small, simple changes 20% of the time in order to get you closer to the health that you want, the vision that you have the rest of the time. Because it is ultimately the 20% that you do of actions that yield 80% of the results. So we need to find those high value actions to drive the high value results. That leads me into the next point that I want to make, which is called the slight edge. So what is the slight edge? So basically, the concept here is that it is the small, simple actions in life over time that yield a compound effect and make the biggest change over time. So I'll try to break that down a little bit. When we have identified those top 20%, it is all about compounding and doing those small things over time to yield the highest amount of results. So the Slight Edge was originally founded and created by a guy called Jeff Olson. It's a very, very powerful book. He talks about identifying those top 20% actions and then the framework to motivate yourself to look at how those things yield results over time. Because very often we're confused. So it's hard to see on a day-to-day basis that what we are doing is actually building the life and the health that we want. So sometimes we need to kind of take ourselves back and reflect back and look at ourselves from the outside and then try to observe and see what kind of impact will it actually have over time if I do these things? Because it's the compound effect over time that is actually critical. And Tony Robbins also says that so we're either in growth or we are in decline. We're never stagnant. So if we don't do anything, then we're actually declining. But if we do something positive, then we are increasing and growing. So it is about trying to identify those top 20% changes and actions that we can make to just keep ourselves gradually increasing, and all of a sudden the compound effect will take action and you won't recognize yourself in 6 months or a year. And so with that, I hope that kind of gives you a clear picture of some of the principles of longevity, functional medicine, and also about the Slight Edge and how these three principles can kind of be a guide and a mental picture for you as we move into the next exercises. So thanks. See you in the next one.